Hazel Ford stepped inside Le Chateau with a quiet breath, her thrift store dress simple and faded, shoes worn from years of use, and a modest leather handbag hanging from her shoulder. The restaurant's grandeur enveloped her immediately. The marble floors gleamed under the soft glow of massive crystal chandeliers, gold inlaid walls reflected shimmering light, and the heady aroma of fine cuisine met the subtle fragrance of expensive perfumes that cloaked the elite guests. Every detail spoke of exclusivity, of a world far removed from Hazel's own. Her presence did not go unnoticed. Heads turned discreetly but unmistakably, eyes narrowed in judgment. A couple seated near the polished bar exchanged smirks behind their raised glasses. A table of well-dressed socialites leaned forward to whisper about the newcomer, their expressions mocking. Hazel's simple attire seemed out of place, fueling speculation. Was she lost? Staff? A charitable mishap? Dominic, the maître d', observed her with thinly veiled disdain. His perfect black tuxedo and flawless grooming contrasted sharply against her threadbare appearance. His gaze roamed downward over her scuffed shoes and back up to her hesitant posture, lips tightening. Without concealing his irritation, he rolled his eyes and muttered just loud enough for a passing waiter, "Poor wannabe guest," eliciting a smirk from the man. Nearby, two patrons scoffed audibly. "Looks like somebody wandered in by mistake," one said. The other chuckled, "Maybe they let the charity send in their rejects today." Laughter rippled across the room, and whispers spread among tables, painting Hazel as an unworthy outsider. Despite the cold reception, Hazel held her chin high, refusing to shrink away from the scornful gazes. Dominic moved with the practiced confidence of a man who knew his territory inside and out. His footsteps were precise, echoing softly on the polished marble as he approached Hazel, who stood by a gleaming column near the entrance, clutching her modest handbag tightly. His mouth curled into a thin, polite smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Can I help you, miss?" "Are you lost?" he asked, voice smooth but edged with an unmistakable chill. Hazel met his gaze steadily, though her heart hammered beneath her ribs. Turning her hand, she carefully unfolded a cream-colored envelope embossed with a subtle gold crest, the emblem of Le Chateau. Her fingers traced the delicate script printed on it. "I'm here for a quiet dinner before the charity gala later tonight," she replied, her voice calm and measured. "This invitation was sent directly to me." She held out the envelope for him to see clearly. Dominic's eyes flicked to the embossed emblem and the invitation inside but did not soften. Instead, he laughed softly, a cold laugh, more a sneer than amusement. "Miss Ford," he said, deliberately mispronouncing the name slightly, something subtle but designed to show his disregard, "I'm afraid you're not on any list here tonight. No one expects you. We don't serve people like you." A ripple of laughter rose from nearby tables as several guests began to glance Hazel's way, phones emerging like flowers blooming in a cruel spring. She caught the glow of their screens pointed in her direction and felt her cheeks burn beneath the weight of a public spectacle. Dominic's voice raised slightly, projecting toward the now murmuring room. "Please follow our staff. You will be shown the way out." A waiter stepped forward, his face barely concealing a smirk. Hazel's breath caught, but her legs remained rooted despite the humiliation. Her shoulders tightened as the waiter gently but firmly gestured toward the exit hallway. Weak murmurs of encouragement floated through the air, from no one at all. Hazel's cheeks flushed crimson, her hands trembling faintly as she tried to maintain her composure. The sting of whispered insults and the sharp laughter echoed in her ears. A tightening knot of anger and shame twisted inside her, but she forced herself to breathe deeply and hold her head high. But then Dominic's tone shifted, dismissive and final. "Fine," he said, voice lowering but still carrying across the dining room. "If you insist on staying, you'll be relegated to the corner by the kitchen. Service will be minimal, as everyone else has already made clear." The waiter led Hazel down a narrow corridor, past the gleaming front room into a dimly lit back corner. The space was cramped and noticeably neglected, with scuffed walls and a chipped table surrounded by folding chairs. It was far from the romantic, softly lit tables filled with laughter and clinking glassware she had glimpsed moments before. Hazel was seated with little ceremony. The waiter dropped a stained menu onto the table and moved away, ignoring her tentative requests for water or the wine list. Other staff members passed with indifferent glances, their eyes averted in deliberate dismissal. From her isolated vantage point, Hazel glanced out toward the main hall. The plush seats there were occupied by diners sharing intimate conversations, their faces glowing with amusement and judgment in equal measure. She caught the eyes of some patrons, smirks quickly hidden, whispered messages exchanged, and an unmistakable feeling settled around her: exclusion, a wall of unspoken rejection. The worst part was the silence. No one spoke up on her behalf. No one offered a kind glance or even a simple nod of support. It was as if she were invisible, or worse, a spectacle for entertainment. Her fingers clenched the table's edge, nails digging into the wood as she fought to stifle the frustration rising in her throat. The sting of tears nudged at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. Hazel wasn't just a visitor, she was someone who deserved respect, regardless of appearance. Around her, the room hummed with continued merriment, the clack of silverware and murmur of privileged voices threading through the air like barbed wire. The glow of smartphone screens from fellow diners, who recorded the spectacle for amusement or gossip, caught the light and reminded her how many had witnessed her disgrace. Hazel closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling slowly to steady herself. The hollow gaze of the maître d' from across the room flashed in her mind, his disdain still piercing. But she was no imposter. In her pocket lay an item more valuable than whatever credentials Dominic thought mattered, a family heirloom, a precious necklace she intended to wear at the gala to honor her grandmother's memory. The thought steadied her resolve. No amount of scorn could erase the legacy she carried. She lifted her chin and opened the stained menu in front of her, signaling silently to the indifferent waiter to take her order, determined to claim a small piece of dignity amid the towering walls of judgment. Dominic retreated to the dimly lit staff room, pulling the door shut behind him with a sharp click. The plush dining room, its crystal glass lights casting soft cascades of brilliance onto the marble floors, felt far away now, replaced by the hum of hushed voices and the faint clatter of dishes. Leaning against the cool wall, he exhaled slowly, his slender fingers tapping the surface of a polished silver tray. Imposters, he muttered under his breath, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. She didn't belong here. Not in this place. This restaurant, Le Chateau, is meant for the finest of fine. For those who understand exclusivity, who embody wealth and refinement. Not for some thrift store tragedy playing dress-up. Behind his tightly knit brow, a flicker of something sharp, perhaps fear masked as contempt, passed through his eyes. Dominic prided himself on maintaining order, on protecting the rarefied atmosphere of the establishment. To him, every invitation was a carefully vetted key to a gilded door. Anyone without the proper pedigree deserved to be turned away. Hazel's presence wasn't a mere accident, it was an affront. Meanwhile, the dining room beneath the chandeliers had resumed its rhythm of luxurious ease. Laughter floated through the air once more, mingling with the clinking of crystal and the soft hum of polite conversations. Guests shared amused quips, some still glancing in Hazel's direction with a mixture of disdain and curiosity, but the incident quickly dissolved into the background. Dominic smiled to himself, confident he had handled the problem effectively. His reflection in the mirror showed a man who believed in the sanctity of tradition, who carried the weight of high society on his shoulders. To allow somebody who didn't fit the mold could risk everything. At the far corner of the restaurant, in the cramped, shadowed nook, Hazel sat alone. The thin veneer of calm she'd projected felt brittle now. Her hands clenched into fists on the stained tablecloth, her eyes glistened, yet no tears spilled. Every whispered insult, every mocking glance, left invisible scratches over her spirit. Still, she held her head high, refusing to let the humiliation consume her. Her mind wandered to the heirloom tucked inside her purse, a delicate necklace passed down by her late grandmother, a woman who had believed in kindness, humility, and hard work above all else. Hazel had saved for years to attend the charity gala tonight, intending to honor her grandmother's memory by wearing the piece proudly. It was more than jewelry, it was a symbol of values that Dominic and the others here would never understand. Suddenly, the distant murmur near the entrance shifted. The restaurant's heavy oak doors swung open with a soft but definite sound. Heads turned as a sleek black Rolls Royce rolled smoothly to a stop outside. Its darkly tinted windows reflected the sparkling lights of the street. The car's door opened, and a sharply dressed assistant stepped out, moving with purposeful grace through the quiet throng of guests gathered outside. He entered Le Chateau, scanning the room with a sharp gaze. His eyes caught on Hazel, and a subtle but unmistakable recognition sparked. Guests began to murmur among themselves, whispers growing like a wave rolling over quiet sand. "Who's that?" asked a woman seated near the piano, lowering her glass in surprise. "Looks like someone important," came the softly spoken reply. All at once, the atmosphere shifted. The previously jovial chatter tapered into a charged hush, punctuated by the soft tapping of fingers on tabletops and the muted sliding of chairs as patrons directed their attention to the newcomer and the woman at the forgotten corner table. Dominic stopped mid-sentence with a waiter, his confidence faltering. His eyes darted toward the entrance, darkening as realization began to bloom. The sense of control he had wielded so firmly moments before started to unravel like fragile lace. In the center of the room, Hazel's eyes met the assistant's for a brief moment. Something unspoken passed between them, an unseen invitation, a silent call that would soon reshape the narrative of the night. The restaurant's heartbeat quickened, turning from a slow, graceful rhythm into a crescendo. There, under the glimmering chandeliers and amidst the rustle of expensive fabrics, Hazel sat poised on the boundary between humiliation and revelation. The presence of the Rolls Royce, the unexpected visitor, and a rapidly shifting mood concluded the fragile balance Dominic had so carefully maintained, the quiet fortress of exclusivity beginning to crumble with one undeniable truth waiting to be told. The murmurs swelled into a chorus of surprise as the polished assistant advanced toward Hazel's shadowed corner, his steps resounding softly on the marble floor. The dining room had fallen into a near silence, forks paused mid-air, conversations dwindled to a hushed curiosity. All eyes were drawn unwillingly away from their glittering glasses to the modest figure of Hazel Ford, the woman whose presence had been the cause of so much whispered scorn only moments before. "Miss Hazel Ford," the assistant's voice rang clear and confident, carrying across the room with a delicate authority, "our keynote sponsor and principal investor. Please, join us at the main floor." Heads swiveled sharply, the words cutting like a sudden gust through the exclusivity that had reigned supreme mere minutes earlier. The large screen situated near the orchestra loft flickered, illuminating Hazel's name in bold letters along with the titles, "Major Investor" and "Charity Patron" beneath it. Gasps rose spontaneously, fluttering through the gathered patrons. Dominic's face drained of color. His carefully maintained mask cracked as he stared, wide-eyed and disbelieving, at Hazel's calm, unflinching stance. The maître d', who had so easily condemned her, now found himself stripped bare of confidence in the unrelenting spotlight of truth. Guests who had sneered and whispered behind raised fans mere moments ago now scrambled awkwardly to find words of apology or diverted glances. Phones dropped in surprise, whispered exchanges rippled across tables, a tide of collective mind resetting its assumptions. Hazel rose steadily, her movements measured and composed. The soft folds of her plain dress, the well-worn flats on her feet, seemed to soften instead of diminish the powerful presence she exerted effortlessly. She glanced down briefly before addressing the room with a quiet dignity. I chose to dress simply tonight, she said softly but with strength, because appearances are not what define us. I have recently returned from fieldwork overseas, serving with our charity to bring aid where it is most needed. Tonight's gala is not about access or status, it's about purpose. Her gaze met Dominic's for a fleeting moment, no anger, just a steady acknowledgement of the harsh judgment she had endured. I am proud to stand here not in fine silks or jewels, but in reverence to my grandmother's legacy. She paused, allowing the room to absorb her words. The necklace I carry, while modest in appearance, is an heirloom passed through generations as a symbol of humility and service. The air shifted palpably. The restaurant once dominated by snobbery now felt tinged with a grace it had not known before. Hazel continued. I am co-owner of the charitable foundation supporting Le Chateau's ongoing renovation and its exclusive events. Our shared mission is to bring awareness and funds to causes larger than ourselves, something I believe transcends outward appearances. Whispers grew softer, more reflective. The sharp edges of judgment receded as admiration blossomed across the room. Some of those who had openly mocked her now studied her feet, then her hands, seemingly swallowing the embarrassment of their earlier cruelty. Dominic stood frozen, the weight of his error pressing upon him. Hazel's quiet grace and genuine humility loomed in stark contrast to the narrow-mindedness he had displayed. As she was escorted toward the center of the room by the assistant, the diners formed an unspoken circle around her, their eyes filled with something approaching respect. The music shifted from light chatter to a gentle soft melody, notes drifting through the air like a balm. Hazel's presence redefined the space as she walked with measured steps, every inch the powerful, respected woman she was, a striking juxtaposition to the poor wannabe image others had so hastily projected. The unveiled truth settled over the room poignantly. Grace and strength often live quietly beneath unassuming surfaces, waiting only for a chance to shine. In that moment, Hazel transformed from an outcast into the very embodiment of what Le Chateau aspired to represent, forcing the elite clientele to confront the limits of their own prejudice and assumptions. The night's tone shifted irreversibly. Where there had been scorn, there was now acknowledgement. Where whispered insults had floated, there was the silence of newfound respect. Le Chateau, with all its grandeur and splendor, had opened its heart to a woman whose quiet dignity had broken through the barriers of wealth and vanity, leaving everyone present to reckon with an unforgettable lesson in humility and grace. The restaurant's owner, a statuesque woman with sharp features and impeccable style, stepped forward from the rear of the dining room. Her gaze fixed like a laser on Dominic, the maître d', who still stood frozen near the doorway, his face pale and flushed with embarrassment. The room's chatter hushed instantly as she began to speak, her voice ringing with authority. Dominic, she said, voice clear and unforgiving, your conduct this evening has been unacceptable. To demean a valued sponsor and investor, to judge by appearances and exclude without cause, is a betrayal of the very principles we stand for here at Le Chateau. Dominic opened his mouth to protest, but the owner cut him off with a raised hand. You are suspended immediately, pending a full review and retraining on our policies. This establishment will not tolerate discrimination or narrow-mindedness, no matter who orchestrates it. A ripple of approval spread through the guests, many nodding quietly, others whispering in agreement. The social fabric of the evening had shifted. The crowd, once complicit in Dominic's snobbery, now turned on him, their stares sharp and unforgiving. Phones blinked as whispers and comments began circulating rapidly on social media, painting Dominic as the villain of a swiftly unfolding narrative about arrogance and exclusion. Dominic's shoulders slumped as murmurs intensified around him. The power he had wielded so confidently just hours before evaporated into the chill of professional disgrace. The reality of public scrutiny settled heavily, pressing into the corners of the once proud man's soul. Later, as the event continued with a renewed spirit of respect and purpose, Dominic found himself in the lobby, near the grand entrance flanked by towering marble pillars. Hazel stood there, her graceful figure silhouetted against the soft amber lighting, speaking quietly with a staff member. Their conversation paused when their eyes met, drawing them together unexpectedly. He hesitated, eyes cast downward first, then lifting slowly to meet hers. Hazel offered a faint, composed smile, neither gloating nor bitter, a look that spoke of quiet understanding. It was a smile that recognized human failings but refused to be consumed by them. "I hope tonight marks a new beginning, for you as well," she said softly, her voice carrying both warmth and strength. Dominic's throat tightened, words caught in his chest. He managed a nod before she turned gracefully and walked away. The simple dignity of her departure left an indelible impression. The grand doors of Le Chateau opened onto the cool night air as Hazel moved through the exit, bathed in the soft glow of street lamps and the admiring whispers of onlookers. Every step was steady and assured, the modest attire that once drew sneers now lent an air of genuine elegance. Inside, guests lingered, eyes following her retreating figure, speeches forgotten for a moment. The atmosphere had irrevocably changed. The lessons of the evening, humility, grace, and the power of presence beyond appearances, settled in the air like a new fragrance, one more potent than any perfume. Le Chateau stood transformed, its walls and chandeliers bearing silent witness to a turning point, where exclusivity gave way to inclusivity, where judgments were challenged, and where a woman in a thrifted dress altered the course of their world with nothing more than unshakable dignity and quiet strength.